Um, okay, what I would like to do today is I would like to tell you a little bit about the state of digital humanities in South Africa or Southern Africa. Um, some of the things that we've done, some of the things that we're trying to do. And I realize South Africa might be far away for a lot of you. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to take a look at this situation or listen to what I'm trying to present and think how we can learn from each other, how you can provide useful feedback to us, for example, to see how we can grow, how we can change things. I have a few calls for action during the presentation as well, so I hope that people might be interested in seeing what can we do together. Um, I think it's a pity if we try to all work in silos and not learn from each other. So ultimately, this talk is not just about the situation in South Africa and what we're trying to do, um, things that you might find interesting, but also to see how can we find collaborations and how can we grow together. Okay, so let me start. When I was preparing this presentation, I was actually thinking, where do I start? What do I start talking about digital humanities in South Africa? Where do I start? And I realized, so this is perhaps one of these cliches, like digital humanities is a relatively new field in South Africa. And I wrote that down, and I'm like, what does this really mean, right? What does a new field mean? Is it really new? Where are we currently? What is the current state of digital humanities here? And perhaps, and I hope that that's where we have the influence. What can we expect in the future? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through each of these questions briefly, and I'll give some examples of the things we're doing, the things that we're planning to do. Um, and okay, so they didn't actually resolve my problem. Where do I start? So I will do a one slide kind of history of digital humanities on a global scale, or perhaps two slides. So I'll quickly go through this. So we'll first look at so is digital humanities really a new field or a relatively new field in South Africa? So where people normally start with the history of digital humanities is Father Busa with his automation of linguistic analysis, where he created a concordance, words in their immediate context. And at some point, I read about Ada Lovelace, the daughter of Lord Byron, who is considered the first programmer. And I found that wonderful because at the time, this is, kind of mid 1800s, um, computers didn't really exist, at least not like how we know them now. But they were really thinking about these things. And actually, I don't find it too interesting whether what that first computer program was like, but she was the one, at least what I could find, who first proposed to use a computer for something non-numeric. So at the time, computers were really just calculators. But she was the one, as far as I could find, who proposed to use it for something like music. Okay, so just to add some more information, there are whole discussions about whether she actually wrote the program, and that computer was actually never implemented, so it's all a bit vague. All of that's irrelevant. My point is, she might have been the first one to think of using a computer for something humanities like music. So I think digital humanities kind of started mid 1800s, although you could argue 1940s approximately. If we then look when the field really kind of started, I think it's the 1960s, 1970s, you see different organizations and publications pop up. I think we all know about this, right? And then in 2005, a lot of these organizations kind of joined together in the ADHO, the Alliance of Digital Humanities Associations. Okay, so that was a very quick history of kind of global digital humanities. So now you have that context, I can say a little bit more about the situation in South Africa. So what I could find in history is quite interesting. I think I never realized this, but the less far you have to go back in time, the more difficult it is to find this information. Um, so I found that only the beginning of 2000s, there was something in South Africa that you could call digital humanities. And that started, say, around, so there are a few examples there. The South African History Online project, or digital innovation in South Africa, or the International Library of African Music that existed for longer but moved to a digital space around the year 2000. They're all focused um, on mostly digitization and archives. If we then go a little bit further, so about 4 years later, we see that computational linguistics is popping up in South Africa. So this is around 2004. For example, the Center for Text Technology was founded that year, but there are also a number of other universities that have courses or some research on computational linguistics. And at some point, we see the National Center for Human Language Technology. So this is kind of more organized within the country. In 2012, they started the Resource Management Agency. That's an organization that keeps track of, or that creates a repository of digital language resources. So South Africa is trying to organize itself, and this is very much focused on the field of computational linguistics. Okay, so only 10 years later, so 2014 is when I could find the kind of first isolated digital humanities activities. So for example, the University of Pretoria had a symposium called the Digital Humanities and the Representation of Self. Durban University of Technology had a Best Digital Humanities Tool Award. Northwest University had a Digital Humanities Awareness Symposium, and there are a few more of these. So this is only in 2014 or around 2014. In 2016, the Digital Humanities Association of Southern Africa is founded, and they joined ADHO in, so remember the global organization ADHO, they joined that in 2018. If you want to find more information about DHASA, there's a link to the website. So I think this is really relatively new. So what exactly is, let me move this bar a little bit away. So what is currently happening in South Africa? So I just mentioned DHASA, the Digital Humanities Association of Southern Africa. The organization is still active. I hope it will be more and more active. That's another call for action. So the idea is that we want to promote digital humanities as a priority in the area of humanities and social sciences. So the idea is that we want to boost awareness, and we mostly do that through conferences. We also have a journal. I'll mention that in, I think, the next slide as well. And we want to extend this field of digital humanities, what so far was seen as either archiving or computational linguistics. We want to expand that to other fields in other kind of subfields or fields in the area of the humanities. Now, I have to say, DHASA so far has been mostly active in South Africa only. The conferences have been in South Africa. And this is really, like I said, a call for action, not just to have, I mean, I'm not complaining that people in South Africa are active, but it would be great if we can really move that, make that a bit bigger and see activities in Southern Africa as well. So this is my first kind of call for action. Let's see if we can find people in the area of Southern Africa to be active in DHASA. Okay, so I already mentioned DHASA is organizing conferences. So far, they've happened every other year. So in 2017, we had the inaugural conference. 2019 had a theme African Digital Humanities. 2021, digitally human, artificially intelligent. 2023, it's Digital Humanities for Inclusion. And this year, we'll have another one, and the theme will be the role of humanities in digital humanities and artificial intelligence. We're currently organizing this, so the call for papers will be open soon. Yeah, this is another call for action. Please consider submitting something to this conference. I think it will be a wonderful one. So what we typically try to do is not just to have a conference where people present their work, but also have specialized workshops, tutorials, possibly a shared task. We've had that in the 2023 round, if I remember correctly. So we really try to make this a bigger event, not just a conference where people present their work. A few years ago, we also started an academic journal, JDASA. This is a peer-reviewed, completely open access, diamond open access journal. So if you're working in the field of digital humanities, especially if there's a relationship with digital humanities in Southern Africa, then I would also really request you to submit something to that journal. It's completely free, so no problems with payments, etc. Okay, so that is DHASA. Another organization that's really active in the field of digital humanities is SADiLaR. So that's where I currently work, the South African Center for Digital Language Resources. This is a countrywide research infrastructure. So we're directly funded by the South African government. So even though we're hosted at Northwest University in Potchefstroom, we are not working specifically for that university. We're active for all the universities in the country. And we try to have a number of work together with a number of organizations that all each have their own specialized kind of focus areas. So the hub where I work is at Northwest University, but we have several nodes that each have their own speciality. So I remember, if you remember, I mentioned CTEX, the Center for Text Technology earlier. So they're one of the nodes of SADiLaR focusing on the language technology. ISELDA is an organization that's actually a collaboration of organizations. They focus on language testing. University of Pretoria is our digitization node. The University of South Africa, UNISA, focuses on terminology and word nets. The CSIR is our speech node, and Stellenbosch University is a child language or child language learning node. And I already mentioned the hub here is at Northwest University, but this is a countrywide organization, research infrastructure. Okay, SADiLaR has two programs, even though you see three bullet points there. And I'll explain why that's there. The first one is a digitization program where we try to collect and build language resources. I'll say a little bit more about that as well. Then the second program, and I think that's the most relevant here, is the Digital Humanities program, where we try to build digital humanities research capacity in the country. And the third one, which is currently in development, so that's why we're saying we're running two programs, we're developing a third one, is to see if we can create specific support for kind of multilingualism in the higher education sector. Okay, so let me say a little bit more about these two programs that we're running. So the first one, the digitization program, it focuses on creating language resources for all of the official South African languages. And for those of you who don't know, South Africa actually has 12 official languages. Recently, the 12th one was added, and that's the South African Sign Language. So that introduces kind of interesting challenges because it's not text-based. So we now need to look at multimodal resources, and not just text and speech, but also video, for example. So the idea is that this digitization program starts collecting and creating digital language resources that can be the source of, for example, the development of um, uh, human language technology tools. So if we look at all of these languages, we see that for English, there is actually a lot available worldwide. But if we then look at the specific South African English, we actually see that there's hardly anything available. For Afrikaans, there are decent amounts of data available, but for most of the other languages, there's really hardly anything available. I'll say a little bit more about that in the later slides as well. So if we want to build something like a large language model for these languages, we really do not have enough data to actually do this. So this is a very important part. So I already mentioned most of this. So the idea is that we want to collect more data, data collections. We're digitizing, so scanning, OCRing text. We annotate data. All of this is made available in our repository. So if you're interested in doing something with these languages, the data sets are freely available on our repository. And yeah, the idea is that if we have this, we can make computational linguistic tools available for the South African languages. We also have a few language independent tools available on our website that people can use. Okay, so here I want to quickly highlight another presentation that's happening during this symposium on Monday. It's called Decolonial Agendas and the Natural Language Processing in South Africa's Multilingual Landscape. I haven't seen the presentation. I don't know exactly what will happen there, but I think it's very relevant to the work we're doing as well. So I'm actually looking forward to this presentation. Okay, continuing with the next program, the Digital Humanities program. So the idea is that we want to create awareness and support digital humanities in South Africa. So we want people to know what is happening, what is available, so that people can actually use it. In this context, we provide training for activities. So humanities researchers that want to move into more digital humanities aspects, but we also try to see if we can get more computational people to consider or understand the challenges that are kind of interesting in the field of humanities. Now here I want to quickly highlight that the focus of what we're doing is very much on language. And that is really because of that history, the history of computational linguistics and archiving. Most of the people working at SADiLaR also have a language background, but I would really like to open up this field of digital humanities in South Africa to not be just focusing on language. So this, I mean, I'll get back to this later as well, is another kind of call for action. Okay, so what is now the current status of digital humanities in South Africa? Um, okay, I actually started thinking about this, and I reflected when I moved to South Africa, which was just in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic. Um, at that point, we performed a needs assessment, and I'll just give a brief summary of the results of that. It showed that people really required training. They didn't really know what was available, what they could do. They wanted training and they didn't know where to get the training. Um, they wanted training at a kind of basic, kind of entry level knowledge, but also more advanced topics. And most of the training or material that was available was not contextualized to the African context. So it's like you understand what a training is doing, but then you don't know how to relate it to your own work. At the same time, there were a lot of people interested, but there was no community. So they didn't know who they could talk to, where they could get information, who they could collaborate with. So they wanted to find similar researchers, research groups, perhaps projects to get an idea, something like that, want to get collaboration opportunities. So these are the main 2 points that we needed to work on. Okay, so in a way, researchers were interested, but they didn't really know where to start. So as a challenge, it was unclear what is available, where to find the useful information, and what is actually already being done. Um, okay, so we can see this as challenges, but you can also see it as opportunities, right? So I mentioned DHASA. DHASA provides these academic outlets, so journals and conferences where you can publish, where you can show your research. So that might be a nice point where people can get together and learn from each other. And SADiLaR, like I mentioned, provides training opportunities. So that might be a place where we can get these trainings. And if we can get that together in the right way, that actually allows us to build our own community where we can learn from each other, where we can work together. Okay, so when I arrived, a few of the activities were already happening. So just after I arrived, one of the things we did is we went out through the country and we wanted to people to really celebrate their language. So a lot of these South African languages people are using in the home, but they don't see it as a language that they can use for everything. It's like, yeah, you can use it, but it's not so important. And we wanted to have people realize that their language is actually important, that they can do a lot of things with this, that it's actually interesting to research this language, to build tools with this, etc. So we had these language celebrations, bring people together. And we also had a number of training activities. People could request a training and we would go out there and provide this training. But these were typically ad hoc trainings. So people would request them, we did them, and off we went again. So all of these activities were essentially once off. We didn't have any follow-ups. We didn't have any building on top of the knowledge or the trainings that we did. There was no real community building. So then we sat down and really rethought this idea, and we came up with a project called ESCALATOR. And I'll say a little bit more about that. So what is currently happening? in digital humanities in South Africa. And by the way, all these pictures are kind of automatically generated, and this one is actually pretty decent. Um, so the situation is that a lot of stuff is happening, but none of it is perfect yet, right? So this picture is actually pretty okay. The previous ones were a little bit more messy. Um, so I think that is where we're currently at. So we have things that kind of work, but we need to improve them. We need to see how we can improve these. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about Escalator. So Escalator is a national project, and the idea is that it kind of creates a structured training and community building activities. So in general, it supports this whole development of a community of practice. And looking at that needs assessment that we did, we realized that we needed to have different aspects kind of together, creating this community. So on the one hand, we have awareness creation events, and I'll say a little bit more about that, where we show people what can be done in digital humanities, what digital humanities can be, and where they might get started. We also created a stakeholder map, and the idea is that people can see who's who in the field of digital humanities in South Africa. To create some sort of way for people to communicate with each other, we started a Slack. I'll show all of this. And for the training activities, and I see there's a typo there on my slide. Ooh, I didn't see that earlier. We created what we call the Digital Champions Initiative. So this is not ad hoc training, but this is trainings that actually build on top of each other. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about these all these activities. So the first one is the awareness creation events. What we did there is we had activities, we call it DH Ignite. These were regional events. So we went throughout South Africa, and we got people from different universities together at a central place where we presented what digital humanities can be. People could present what they were working on, what they wanted to do, really getting people together and form these smaller networks where people know each other and are open to talk about digital humanities. We also shared information about the things that we're doing within Escalator. Okay, so at the moment we're redeveloping this into kind of similar regional events, but we want to really see if we can get this network building a bit more active, and we want to focus a little bit more on training. A lot of people now know what digital humanities is or what it can be, but now we want to see, can we actually help people to properly get started? And we'll also see if we can have additional activities that, for example, we collocate with conferences to for people to really see, there are things happening. We can actually jump into this. Okay, then the stakeholder map. So who's who in digital humanities in South Africa? We developed a platform where people can kind of put in their name, their projects, etc., and it's actually displayed on a map. So it looks something like this. I've got a picture here, and then you can zoom in and you can see who's kind of working together with whom. So this is really putting your name on literally on the map and see who's who can I collaborate with, who can I find that I might want to collaborate with. So the escalator Slack, for those of you who are using Slack, it is a Slack. Um, so it's called DHCSSZA, so DH for Digital Humanities, CSS for Computational Social Sciences, and ZA for the South African focus. You're welcome to join. What we try to do is we try to share a lot of information about opportunities. So conferences, I shared this symposium there as well, of course. So what kind of events are happening in South Africa, but also on a larger scale? Where can people find funding? Where can people find training opportunities? And I hope that this becomes a little bit more active where people ask and answer questions, introduce each other, find collaborations, etc. So this is really a way for people to hopefully easily share and talk to each other. Okay, then the training component of Escalator, the Digital Champions Initiative. So this is a more structured program really aimed to train what we call champions in digital humanities. The idea is that if people go through these programs, they'll become really knowledgeable in digital humanities, and we want to recognize them at their university so that people at that university can actually go to them and ask, "Hey, how can I do this? Who should I talk to if I want to do something like this?" Um, so that's the idea. We try to create tracks within this initiative, each with their own focus, and they just happen to all start with the letter E. So we have, for example, the Explorer track for somebody who really has no idea what is digital humanities, get an introduction into what it is. The Embarker, if you want to start working on this. The Educator one that focuses on developing open educational resources. So we have a number of these, and each have their own focus. I'm not going through all of these. At the moment, this is also being restructured. I want to highlight just a few of these and the activities that we're doing in there. So for example, within the Explorer track, where people want to get a sense of what is digital humanities, I organize a monthly virtual colloquium. This started in October 2020, and at that time I thought, let me just try this a few times and we'll see how it goes. But this is still ongoing, and to be honest, I really, really like this. So every month we have somebody presenting, and I try to make it as broad as possible. So this is me trying to add more topics, so not just language. Um, it's accessible to everybody. The idea is that the presentations are also quite accessible. So this is not extremely complicated stuff. It is really to get a sense of what can we do? What could digital humanities be? And I mean, it's really nice. The discussions we have is really great. If you want to join, please come and join. So the link is there. If you're interested in presenting your work, also just let me know. This is another call. I mean, I've got so many call for actions. Just let me know and we can discuss this. In the educator track that I mentioned earlier, we actually ran a very nice program. This was run by Professor Jaco Olivier, who at the time was the NWU UNESCO Chair of Multimodal Learning and OER. And together with Derek Moore, he ran this program. So Derek Moore essentially wrapped it up. So the focus was on the development of uh, OERs for digital humanities specifically, with a focus of kind of getting the African context in these learning resources. We supported 25 projects throughout South Africa. Then the program consisted of a number of training activities. We had some financial support, and then it was really these groups developing these open educational resources that were shared. This was really a wonderful program. Okay, the next one, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this one because I think this is actually really, really cool, is the SWIP project. So this is still ongoing, but it's already been running for a while now. This is within the Embarker track where people really want to get started. The idea here is to essentially combine a little bit of the digitization program that I briefly talked about earlier, and this training activities, the digital humanities side of things. The idea is that this is a collaboration between three organizations, so SADiLaR, the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, Wikipedia through the Wikimedia Foundation in South Africa, the free online encyclopedia, I think everybody knows this, and with PANSELP, the Pan South African Language Board. So that's an organization that promotes multilingualism, promotes language rights for the official South African languages. So this is a collaboration. And the idea is that we want to get more, um, how do you say this, more of the South African languages online. And the idea behind this is that we just need to enable the people who speak the language. So if we look at the languages being spoken in South Africa, and this is from the 2022 census, the percentages of the official languages spoken most in the household. We see that um, there are some languages that are much, much bigger than others. So isiZulu is the biggest one, followed by isiXhosa and then Afrikaans. Um, but you see, there are also a few really small languages in that sense. So Chivenda is pretty small. Siswati is pretty small. Isindebele is even smaller. But if we now look at the number of articles in these languages on Wikipedia, and okay, I have to say English has that asterisk there. Of course, this is, people all over the world speaking English, so perhaps we need to kind of disregard this here. But you see that even then, the number of articles versus the percentage of people speaking the language is actually quite skewed. Um, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to see if we can boost this. And if we look at the ranking, I think that's where so this is ranking the articles of the 341 languages on Wikipedia. You see that most of these South African languages are actually somewhere at the bottom end. So we wanted to see, can we enable people in South Africa to use their own language to increase their language on Wikipedia? Because then we have a resource that we can use for other development for other tools as well, for example. Okay, so the challenge is that the South African languages, many of them have limited online coverage, for example, Wikipedia, and it actually has a follow-on effect. So people see that there is not a lot of information in that language available, so they're not going to search for the language, so they sense their language is not so important. It also has an effect on the tools that we can build for these languages. There is no ChatGPT in Isindebele because there's not enough language available in digital form. So people again see, okay, my language is not important, and let's switch to English or another language. So this has kind of follow-on effects, and we want to stop this. So the SWIP project aims to fix this, and we want to show language communities that, I mean, they can actually help build this. But what needs to happen is that these people need to know how to contribute something to Wikipedia, for example. So what we do is we reach out to these people, we give them training on how to add information to Wikipedia in their own languages. And by doing that, people learn digital skills. They learn how to use Wikipedia. They also need to think about, how do I use this for my own language? So it's just actively boosting them, training them, not just on the language, but also on the digital side of things. And we hope that it also makes people realize that their language is actually important. So that is the idea of the SWIP project. What we did there is we had a number of authorship workshops. So these are 2-day training events. We did it at different universities in South Africa. People get trained on how to use the Wikipedia interface, and they actually need to contribute some information there as well. So add their own articles, add their text, etc. We organized a writing competition. We also had a panel at the Science Forum South Africa. It was titled Preserving Languages, Open, Free, and Accessible Knowledge for All. So really seeing how can we kind of help the society help us, and that so that we can actually give back to the society as well. Okay, so what do we get in the end? So we measured what people did during the trainings, and we see that we actually got a lot of new articles on there. So Isindebele was not actually on Wikipedia. It was just an incubator project at the time. And the result of this SWIP project is that now Isindebele is actually on the live Wikipedia platform. So there are 130 new articles that were added during these trainings. Okay, so that was the SWIP project. I'd really quickly like to highlight the executive track as well. This is a relatively new track. So we don't just train researchers, we're also trying to see if we can help people at the management level to boost this. I really like a bottom-up approach of digital humanities where researchers get together and start collaborating, and then from there build larger and larger groups and projects, etc. But at some point, a university management, for example, also needs to support this. So the executive track is aimed exactly at that level. We want heads of departments, deans, etc., to understand what it means to have a digital humanities center or a hub or something like that, or to create a curriculum specifically for digital humanities. So what we've done there is we've had a few activities where we really try to just share experiences. So what is it that works if you want to build a digital humanities center or a hub? What doesn't work? What kind of problems did you run into? How can we handle funding, for example? How can we collaborate, even though universities are essentially in competition with each other? How can we collaborate so that we don't, kind of work in each other's fields? So this, I think, is a very exciting track, and I hope that we can also learn from kind of more experienced centers. So, like I said, South Africa is relatively young in this aspect, and I really like to get some kind of international input on this as well. Okay, so what is happening in South Africa? There are actually a number of universities that are creating digital humanities centers or hubs. Most of this is related to research. There are some that are interested more on the teaching side of things. At the moment, as far as I can see, everybody has their own focus, which is actually nice. At the moment, we have a number of digital humanities centers and hubs in South Africa that, at least that I know of. Of course, SADiLaR is one, but we're more of a support structure. I know University of South Africa has one, and Nelson Mandela University has one. If we look at Southern Africa, there are actually a number of universities in Zimbabwe. University of Zimbabwe was the first one outside South Africa that are doing this. In Africa, there are a number of countries that have a number of these events. So I think this is something that's extremely exciting, that is really just developing at this moment. Um, I'm actually very excited about this. Here, I want to highlight another presentation that I think is taking place later today. It's Thursday today, right? In the session of Digital Humanities Infrastructure, I'd like to highlight the reflection on the development and implementation of the Digital Humanities Hub at Nelson Mandela University. So I think this will be another pretty cool presentation. Okay, so what can we then expect from digital humanities in a kind of near future? Um, Okay, if we look at the Explorer track, I would really like to just continue doing this. What I would like to do is I would like to make the topics that we've discussed so far, I'd like to make that a little bit broader. So if you're working in the field of digital humanities and you're like, I think my research nicely fits into this, or I think that will be interesting for people to get a sense of what can happen, please just reach out to me and we can see if we can make this a little bit broader. On the educator track, so that was the second example that I gave. We're actually going to run another round of this. We have a new UNESCO chair of multimodal learning and OER, Professor Dorothy Laubscher. She is going to run another of these events. It's actually going to start approximately now. We're still in discussion for the last details. So the setup is quite similar. We want to have groups of projects so people can apply for this. Um, the focus is on the development of open educational resources in digital humanities. There will be some training on open educational resources and on digital humanities, and then these groups will actually start and develop these resources. There is a bit of funding available as well to actually help these groups to work on this. And the idea is that at the end we'll also write a few academic publications on our experiences of doing this. So I'm quite excited about this as well. And then the Embarker track, so the SWIP project that I mentioned, this has actually just started the second phase. I think at the moment we have the first activities in the second phase that will run up to 2027. The idea is that we really want to grow this digital footprint. So now we made this first start, and that actually has had some effect. Is in the Bailey is now on Wikipedia. I know that there are a number of other institutions outside South Africa that are actually pretty excited about this whole project and that want to collaborate as well. So if you're in a country where you might have a similar situation, your languages are not on Wikipedia, for example, reach out and see how we can collaborate. So we really want to share our experiences, things that work, things that don't work. We want to collaborate more. What we would really like to have is that it's not just us doing this, but us helping other people do this. So we actually can increase the number of activities that are happening in this space. So a number of activities that we're running. We're introducing a train the trainers program where, like I said, we're training people to then so that they can actually train the people to do the actual work. So we have more hands-on people to do this to do all these activities. We also want to not just have trainings, but actually have what we call edit-a-thons. It's nearly impossible to pronounce, but where people get together and will work together on growing the number of articles in the language or kind of fixing up the language on Wikipedia. And we're also really looking at see if we can get community-driven projects. So it's not just from universities, but see if we can get the community to say, hey, it would be great to have something like this, and that we can then enable this. Okay, in a general outlook, so I talked a lot about the things happening within Escalator. What I expect, or perhaps this is a hope for the near future. I would like to see more researchers being active in the field of digital humanities in South Africa or Southern Africa, and this is, I think, an interesting one because there are researchers working in the field of digital humanities, but some people don't realize that they're already doing this. They're just like, no, I'm doing my own stuff. And so I hope that people see that they're actually working in the field of digital humanities and that it opens up possibilities. It opens up possibilities for training, it opens up possibilities for collaboration. It opens up a possibility for combined funding. I think there are a lot of possibilities. If we can get that, then I think at the same time we're growing our digital humanities community. So I would like to see that both in size, having more researchers, like I just said, but I'd also love to have more activities. And if it's just a number of people doing this, then we're always kind of limited by the number of people that are doing this. So if we get more people in who are ready to actually do something, help other people to get in the field, then that would be great. I think having these digital humanities centers and hubs in the country will help, especially if we can get them to collaborate and say, hey, I'm organizing this here, other people might be interested as well, and see if we can get these collaborations going countrywide. Ideally, I think we need to start looking at an even larger picture and not just look at South Africa or Southern Africa, but see if we can create this on a Africa-wide scale. Can we get collaborations between digital humanities centers in South Africa, Zimbabwe, but also Kenya, Nigeria, and the countries where things are already happening. And of course, I'm missing out on countries now, but I'd love to see this kind of Africa-wide collaboration. Of course, it doesn't have to be limited to Africa. I mean, I'd like to see more kind of international collaborations. I think if we can do that, um, we'll get more training and collaboration opportunities, and hopefully we'll get more publication outlets as well. Okay, at the moment, DHASA and SADiLaR, I've talked a lot about this, are, I think, the most active organizations. I hope that list will be longer. I know that these two organizations are very open to collaboration, so please reach out. Other digital humanities organizations, research group, but also individual researchers. Please reach out. We need to get that collaboration going. Okay, that was a long talk. Let me quickly summarize. I think digital humanities at the moment is still a relatively new field in South Africa, but hopefully we're changing that. A lot of the challenges are related to where do we start, but I also see a lot of opportunities. Um, so SADiLaR, DHASA, for example, are trying to do things. We have training opportunities, we have network building opportunities, conferences, publications, but really we need more people here. So this is, I think, my final call for action. Please consider collaborating. Please consider saying, hey, I would like to help a little bit here. Can I do this? Can we do things together? And I think I'd like to end there. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I haven't called for action too many times. I hope you are really thinking now about how we can collaborate. Thank you very much.